Welcome to the 16 Days, 16 Films Awards 2020. I'm Anna Smith. I'm a film critic. I'm host of the Girls on Film podcast. Girls on Film is so thrilled to be partnering with 16 Days, 16 Films for this programme. 16 Days, 16 Films is open to submissions from the UK, Ireland, France, Italy, Mexico and the US. And we've been watching an amazing selection of short films in the competition. Today I'll be chatting to some of this year's judges, including Ashley Judd, and we'll announce the winners at the end of the show. The 16 Days, 16 Films initiative is run by Johanna von Fischer with Gunther Gelvan from Modern Films in partnership with the Kering Foundation. They're supported by the national campaign UK Says No More and NGO partners En Avant Tout in France, Chain Italia in Italy, the National Network to End Domestic Violence in the US, and Fondo Semillas in Mexico. I'm delighted to welcome Johanna now, along with Céline Bonnaire, the Executive Director of the Kering Foundation. So, Johanna, let me start with you. Tell us what 16 Days, 16 Films is all about and how you came to work on it.
So 16 Days, 16 Films takes the 16 days of activism against gender-based violence and I guess celebrates it in a way through film. And yeah, across the board, it's been amazing. The growth of this and the way it's developed and the support we've had has been phenomenal. And of course, you know, our relationship with Kering then last year brought us to a whole nother level, a whole different level of visibility as well. And what's so important for this is not only the visibility of the filmmakers, but the visibility of the different issues that are brought up, because it's not just about physical violence. It's about so many other things. You know, violence against women starts when a woman is seen as something less than, or when anybody is seen as something less than, or their needs are not recognized. So a lot of this is about helping people to see where it begins, like our first film, Absent, Period Poverty, you know, that a woman does not have access to menstrual products is it's ridiculous. You know, we can go and get a condom for free.
Yeah, that's such a good point. Well, all the films you have are incredibly powerful and speak to lots of different aspects of what you're talking about. We'll talk a little bit more about that in a minute, but you mentioned Kering and of course, Céline, it's wonderful to have you with us. Can you tell us a little bit more about Kering and the Kering Foundation and also why you feel strongly about supporting 16 Days, 16 Films?
Yes, so the Kering Foundation is a corporate foundation, and a few words about the Kering Group. It's a global luxury company that manages several houses such as Gucci, Saint Laurent, Balenciaga, to name a few, and with 38,000 employees worldwide. And the Kering Foundation was launched in 2008 by our chairman and CEO François-Henri Pinault with the sole and unique purpose of combating violence against women. So we partner with local organizations in 6 main countries: Mexico, the US, the UK, France, Italy, and China, which are the countries where we have most employees and know better the context. And to combat violence against women, we have a threefold strategy. So we support local organizations that support survivors, women survivors, and provide them with comprehensive services, such as Women's Aid in the UK, for instance. We develop prevention programs with the youth, and in particular with men and boys, to put an end to the intergenerational cycle of violence. And we also bring others on board. We believe that as a company, it is our responsibility to make the workplace a supportive and safe place for survivors. And 2 years ago, in 2018, we created the first European network of companies engaged into combating violence against women, the 1 in 3 Women Network.
Congratulations, these are amazing achievements and it's wonderful to see you working together. Johanna, tell me, what are the particular benefits and joys of working with Kering on this project?
We're no experts. We're absolutely no experts in this area. So it's really important for us that this isn't something that is just being done by people who work within film. We very much rely, we have a 60 strong, or at least this year we had a 60 strong viewing committee, of which at least half of those come from people working in these centers and organizations that Celine was talking about. So they come with a great deal of experience and expertise. We've not only got the people who are working on the ground, but we've got activists who are watching, academics who write about sex in film and how it's portrayed, as well as filmmakers and people who work within film organizations. So it's really interesting. We took nearly 350 films and brought it down to 70 through that process. And then the final group of us watched those 70 to get the final 16. And I have to say, the strength of the films this year, there were films that I was so sad were not in that final 16. And you always want them to be recognized for the work they're doing, because they're highlighting things that we all need to know about. It really excites me when I get messages from people who don't work in film, who are in my life, who are watching this. They aren't activists, and they're saying things like, I just learned something amazing today, or I didn't realize this was an issue.
Well, I think what's so important about it, every time I watch one of your films, I learn something, even though I'm a feminist and I work in this area. Celine, what kind of responses have you had from the people that have given you feedback about 16 Days, 16 Films?
I believe that 16 Days, 60 Film allows to convey the complex realities of violence against women. And even if every film has a unique way of telling a story or a voice, there is always this common thread of the strength and the resilience of survivors. We can also inspire people to take concrete actions after seeing the 16 films or the 3 awarded. And concrete action, concrete conversations about what it is to have a healthy relationship, about respect and equality. So I'm really excited to see this year's films and how they are received, and especially the Audience Award that we've launching this year.
Well, we're excited to be announcing it on this show today. It's great stuff. Well, Celine and Johanna, both, thank you so much for your time today. It's been a pleasure to speak to you.
Thank you, Anna.
Thank you. My next guest is a psychotherapist, a campaigner, and a global leader on gender rights, as well as one of our judges. She is Dr. Leila Hussein, OBE. Well, Leila, welcome. It's great to have you with us.
Thank you so much for having me.
Your CV is incredibly impressive. Tell us a bit more about your work as an activist and expert on FGM.
So I'm a psychotherapist by background, but at heart, I think I've been an activist since the age of 7, my mum would say. I've always been someone who has been fighting back any form of injustice. So that really is the core of who I am as a person. I founded the Dahlia Project a couple of years ago, which is the first counselling service for FGM survivors. But before that, I was a youth outreach worker working with young people around issues around gender-based violence. But I really wanted to highlight the issue around female genital mutilation. I mean, there was a whole campaign in the early 70s in the UK. A law was passed in the 80s. However, it was still being discussed as a form of cultural practice, not as a form of child abuse. And I really wanted to bring that to the table. And that's the conversation I wanted to kind of spearhead this too, because, you know, it's not a cultural practice, that's abuse, and that's what it should be called. And I guess my work as a therapist, as an activist, somehow collide together because I get to create safe spaces where we do have this conversation. I call myself a troublemaker. I am. Somebody has to rock the boat a little bit. Somebody has to make somebody uncomfortable. And I do actually enjoy holding that space, especially those who are our leaders, who are supposed to be our leaders, leading us. And I think with my work, working with creative people has always been very important to me. I'm a very creative person myself. I worked with artists, filmmakers, writers. So for me, bringing all those components together is extremely important in my work. But also, just to add, I would say I'm that what you would call the accidental activist. So I didn't know I was an activist. I always questioned everything. But the muse behind all the work that I do is actually my daughter. I became aware that FGM was an issue or a problem or even violence when I had her. And I grew up in the West. There's an assumption girls in the West understand this is wrong and terrible. I can absolutely assure you that wasn't the case for me, and there's loads of me still out there. And for me, it's been trying to create that space for us to recognise that.
And can you tell us a little bit more about, if you don't mind, your journey you went on when you had your daughter and the sort of realisations that you made?
Yeah, so I've undergone the practice myself. So for those who don't know what FGM is when you remove the female genitalia partially, you remove the whole, basically all of it, from the clitoris to the small labia to the large labia. And this is something I've undergone as a child at the age of 7. Hence why my mum says I've been fighting back since, because I did fight back even that day. But no one ever talks about it again. There's a big party involved, you get gifts. I remember getting a gold watch. Anyway, 21 years later, I had my daughter Feiruz, and it was a health professional who asked me what my pregnancy was like. And I said, I said, it was horrible, it was terrible. I said, giving birth was even worse. But I said, giving birth, it was the being vaginally examined that was really horrible for me. Because I said, every time I was examined, I blacked out. And this is the first person that said to me, she said, oh, Miss Hussein, can I just check? I understand you're from Somalia. And I know in Somalia they practice something called female genital mutilation. Can I just check if you've undergone this? So she checked, she didn't assume. And that I really appreciated that. And my response was, of course, I've been through this. I didn't have the worst type. I had type 2 where everything was not removed. I didn't have problems urinating or having my periods or having sex. That was not an issue for me. And she calmly explained to me, she said, when your body experiences such trauma, what it does, even though psychologically we suppressed it somewhere, but your body still has a way of remembering. So my body, every time, so I was literally, if you think about it, I was in the same position of when I was mutilated, whenever I was vaginally examined. And I was, because I came from a privileged family, I had a doctor who did it. So every time a medical profession came at me with an instrument between my legs, I passed out. So really that's how that journey started for me. And it really started with me wanting to ensure that I didn't want my daughter going through this or anyone putting me in such pressure to do it. So that's why this job is not a hobby that I created. It's personal. It's very personal to me. Unfortunately, every 11 seconds globally, a girl will be cut and mutilated. And it's interesting that how we're in a world pandemic right now and the world has freaked out about it. Part of me feels quite frustrated because as problematic as this virus is, but there's another pandemic that we're not choosing to talk about. And I will always be that voice to remind people of that.
It's incredible work you do, and thank you for being involved with 16 Days, 16 Films. Tell me why being involved with this and being a judge is important to you.
I followed these films for a while now, so to have been asked to be part of it, it's been an honour. And I'm a big fan when film is being used to tell these very difficult stories. I think it's such an educational platform. It's very close. It's something that's very close to my heart. And I'm like I said, working with creative people has always been a big part of my activism. So this kind of merges both together, and I loved the combination of films, documentary, and animations, and stories being told in so many ways. But the common thread is these are issues necessarily the world doesn't really want to talk about all the time, and I love that. It's bringing these taboo issues to the forefront.
Yeah, it's amazing how powerful emotional responses one can have watching these films. It shows how incredibly important they are. And hopefully they spur people on to action, as you say. Thank you so much for joining us, Layla. And will you come back and present an award later?
Yes, I will. Thank you.
Let's take a look at this year's shortlisted films. Absent, a UK entry directed by Libby Burke-Wilde. The Road is a Red Thread from Mexico, directed by Melissa Elizondo Moreno. Eyes Down from the UK, directed by Charlotte Daniel. Halwa from the US, directed by Gayatri Bajapi and Nirav Bakhta. Blossom from France, directed by Lisa Lamoris, Canel Anglade and Etel Arni-Cousseau. Thread from the US, directed by Yuri Zhang. Time and Days from Italy, directed by Alessia Buiati. Ballet After Dark from the US, directed by B. Monet. Expensive Shit from the UK, directed by Adura Onashile. Reshma from the US and Italy, directed by Livia Alcade. Backwards God from the US, directed by Natalie Cook. Heart, Eyes and a World from the UK, directed by Rosie Morris. Alejandra, I Love You from Mexico, directed by Minerva R. Bolaños. Paper Thin from the US, directed by Lucia Flores. Her Song from Ireland, directed by Eva Bortolozzo and Jack Kerwin. Good Thanks You from the UK, directed by Molly Manning Walker. This year there was an impressive jury of 18 filmmakers, activists and changemakers. Here they are. Some of the jurors sent us their thoughts about why these awards matter to them personally. Let's take a look.
Buongiorno a tutti from Italy. Thank you so much. Grazie mille for inviting me. I think we desperately need to talk more and talk louder about these topics. Congratulations to everyone who was involved in the production of the movies. I will bring this experience in my heart and I will do the best I can to spread the message. Thank you so much.
I want to thank everybody involved in the 16 Days Film Project. They, in amazing ways, celebrate the voices of women speaking out on all forms of discrimination, and particularly violence against women. I looked at them as an activist who's been working to engage men in this fight for 20 years. And my lens on the films is around that. How do we call men's attention to this and engage men as allies?
Thank you, Modern Films and Caring Foundation, for inviting me to be part of this important initiative. It's been nothing but a privilege to spend the time watching these tremendous films and feeling connected to filmmakers all over the world and people living in situations of domestic abuse and victims of gender violence. Congratulations to everybody and thank you for asking me.
The 16 films which were submitted for us to watch were amazing. They really highlighted the devastating impact that violence against women and girls has on society. Just such powerful messaging that I think made the audience watching want to stand up and to take action and just demand that change, which is the exact reason why UK Cinema and Modern Films co-created 16 Days, 16 Films. I hope everyone's really enjoyed the films as much as we did.
16 Days, 16 Films is an amazing initiative to start talking about gender violence, whether it's in front or behind the camera. It's giving women the possibility to speak up about all these subjects that we really want to bring out into light. I hope this keeps going for a very long time because we have to keep giving women voices to speak out in the most silent situations. So, thank you.
Now let's hear more from one of our judges. Ashley Judd is an author, an actor and a social justice humanitarian. She's a leader of the Me Too movement and a founding member of Time's Up. Her satellite connection is a bit patchy in this interview, but her words are gold. Ashley, thank you so much for joining us today. It's a real pleasure to have you on the show. Tell me, obviously you're a judge on this, you feel passionately about this. Why is it important to you to support 16 Days, 16 Films?
Well, I am Global Goodwill Ambassador for the United Nations Agency for Sexual and Reproductive Health. And so the UN Women's Agency, which seeks to support women and girls throughout the world. And there are 16 days to eliminate all forms of violence and discrimination against girls and women, is something that I support every year. And to do so through film seemed a really natural fit for me. And we already see so much casual violence, misogyny, and patriarchy in films. So why not be intentional about it and show in a conscientious, artful, creative way that violence against girls and women is traumatic and painful and solvable, you know? And so these films, instead of just showing that girls and women are disposable, shows the emotional impact, the traumatic impact, the physical impact, and then also in some films shows the resilience and the solutions, but it really shows the cost. And, you know, I remember so many films where we see the violence and it's not commented upon in a thoughtful, meaningful way that allows us to absorb, oh, that's a human being. And that's what these 16 films do. And so they're chalk and cheese, you know. They deal with the same kind of misogyny and patriarchy that so many other films do, but they do so in a way that, as I said, is thoughtful and meaningful and appreciable.
I think that's such a great point that it just flips the script basically, and it's, you know, a totally different viewpoint. All the films I've watched are so powerful. You've touched on many aspects of them, but what impressed you particularly about this year's selection?
Well, I was pretty unfamiliar with short films as a genre. And so I was really awakened to the craft, the skill, the power, and really the might of a short film. And that so much narrative could be packed in a very satisfying way into a film that's 3 minutes. I mean, the film Absent, for example, which is about what some call period poverty, is a very complete story about an adolescent girl who's menstruating and her mom and she can't afford menstrual pads or tampons, and she has a period mark outside of her clothing that's visible and detectable. This is all done in 3 minutes. It was so impressive to me. And then there are films that are 16 minutes long, like Expensive Ship, which is by far one of the most effective films I've seen in the past, 2 or 3 years. And all of them were very high caliber. They were innovative and creative. Some were very experimental and others were more, sort of straightforward narrative with a beginning, a middle, and an end, but all were incredibly satisfying.
I want to move slightly more to the film industry at large now, because obviously you're very involved with Me Too and Time's Up. How do you feel that we can all work together to make the film industry specifically a safe and equal place for women?
We're on it. So there's doing it on film by showing stories such as these and showing them in an intersectional way so that we make sure that we accurately describe the experiences of class, of race, of religion, of like I said, low wage workers, of women who are isolated in their experiences, of disabled or other abled people, and that we just show the multiplicity of the lived realities of girls and women. And by doing that, we more effectively draw out the realities of what it means to live at the intersection of multiple kinds of discrimination and oppression. So film has a great responsibility. And part of that answer is representation, that we show all these different kinds of girls and women. And then behind the scenes, with Time's Up, we're on it. We've made great strides. hello, no more auditions in hotel rooms and in private homes. And actors, when they go to their auditions, they can bring a safety person as their companion, someone that they choose to be there as, I call it a body person. Some of these things are so common sense as to be like, how is it 2021 almost? And we're just now doing these very matter of fact and routine things that should have been standardized ages ago. But actors in some regard have been very disempowered, and now we're much more empowered with these workplace safety standards.
We're all very grateful for you for fighting this cause. It's something that we talk about constantly on Girls on Film as well. Is there anything else you're up to at the moment or in the future you'd like to share with us?
Well, I just did an independent film that was so extraordinary about the great Andrea Dworkin, a self-described lesbian radical feminist. And the opportunity to speak her words was so sacred. And as I described the film, people will be unable to unhear and unsee things that they hear and see in the film. I mean, she was a great, Gloria Steinem describes her as a prophet from Hebrew scripture who was raging alone in the hills. I mean, she talked so much about the linkages between incest and childhood sexual abuse and the pipeline into prostitution and the link between pornography and prostitution and sex trafficking. And she was a seer.
We really look forward to that. I can't wait to see it. Now, Ashi Judd, thank you so much. But will you come back later and present an award in our ceremony?
Yes, of course.
Great. See you then. We may not be able to walk down the red carpet this year, but I'm here in a frock in my local cinema to bring you a little bit of glamour for the awards segment. And to announce the winner of the second runner-up prize is Layla Hussein.
It's a film from the UK, Expensive Shit by Adura Onashile.
So my name is Adura Onashile and the film I made is called Expensive Shit. It's the story of a toilet attendant, Tolu, who we meet on a night where she's forced to choose between saving herself and harming a regular punter who's her mate. And I wanted to make the film because I was really interested in the layers of power and sort of exploitation that exists within the world of kind of clubs and toilets that have toilet attendants in them. And I'm fascinated by the vantage point of these women who are exploited and alienated and isolated, but actually they have a particular vantage point around the things in society, around gender politics and gender-based violence that we'd rather hide. So the film is sort of an exploration of that character in a very, very stressful situation.
Here to announce our runner-up, I'd like to welcome Sarah Gavron.
I'm delighted to announce the runner-up, Ballet After Dark by B. Monet. This is not only a beautifully made film, but it also carries a beautiful message and feels very, very hopeful at a time in a year where we really need hope. I was inspired by it, as were all the jury. So huge congratulations to B. Monet and the team.
Everyone did such a great job today! And clap.
I knew at the age of 4 that I wanted to be a dancer. I remember asking my mother at 8 if I could audition for a dance program, and her answer was no. She said, "That's not something that Black girls do." But I didn't let that stop me. I remember taking the bus to ballet. I was riding the bus straight through the hood of Baltimore City, and I remember all of the balls of paper being thrown at me. All of the kids calling me an Oreo, which meant that I was a black girl on the outside but white on the inside because I was going to ballet. My saving grace was knowing that as soon as I got off the bus, I was going to get into the studio and dance.
Hi, everyone. My name is B. Monet, and I'm the writer-director of Ballet After Dark. I guess it was 2 years ago. One of my good friends, she was documenting these women, in Baltimore. And I was just like, what is this project? And so my curiosity kind of fascinated me towards learning more and more about Ballet After Dark. These are Black women, Black girls who are not usually in this art form. I'm all for like flipping the box. I think it's the rebel in me. It's like, I hear you and I see that this is what it's been, but I'm also like, let's change it. Let's, flip people's perception. I'm always about that.
Let's welcome back Ashley Judd to present our first prize.
It is a pleasure to be back with you to announce this year's first place winner. It was a tough call. Our jury, we definitely had our hands full because all of the entries were so valuable and interesting and well made. But our consensus was strong that the first place should go to a powerful, urgent, emotional short film from Mexico. The Road is a Red Thread by the wonderful filmmaker Melissa Elizondo Moreno. You must see this 6-minute film that is replete with a mother's love for her child and an urgent political message about femicide in Mexico, where women are being murdered and dismembered in astonishing numbers. You've got to see The Road is a Red Thread. It will leave you wondering when she wakes up in the morning, will her hug of her child be like the Madonna, mother and child, or will it become a Pietà, her holding her child when she has been murdered? It's an incredible piece. The Road is a Red Thread. Congratulations.
Si un día soy yo, quiero ser la última.
Mi nombre es Melissa Elizondo Moreno. For me, it's very important that these kind of themes are talk about the point of view of a woman, because the majority of the works, not only in the movies, in all the media, the characters of the woman are constructed by cliches. And I think that when you see a film from a perspective of a woman is different, and you can feel more connected. You resonate with this message, and I think that these themes, society needs to talk and reflect continuously about these kind of things, and that maybe these works also can reach to the young people to keep generate pressure about these issues, these topics.
Now to announce the Audience Award winner, I'd like to welcome Eden Tinto Collins, who won last year's Audience Award.
I feel by making films that we can save our lives, not just by denouncing our terror. So what I was looking for in the pre-selection of the films for this year was the catharsis. and I must admit that I had the pleasure to find it. Through the way that women, with their intentions, can partly transform the reality that we are living in. And this was a beautiful experience for me to watch these films because all intersections were included. It is now for us the moment to discover who won the very special prize of the Audience Award. I must say that I was instantly seduced by this film. It's a film that allows us to talk about representation and the complexity of a woman community. I'm very glad to announce you that the Audience Award goes to Eyes Down and the wonderful work of Charlotte Daniel and her team.
I'm Charlotte, I'm the writing director of Eyes Down. Being a trans ally in trans activism and bringing that representation to screen is actually something that I'm really passionate about. So all of a sudden I was like, wow, there's this film that I could actually make that's hopefully going to actually make a bit of a positive impact in the world at the moment. So that was sort of where that came from. I sort of realised that hopefully this could really help to create positive representation for trans people as well as a trans woman, to see a trans woman of a particular age on screen. I thought this could be a fantastic opportunity to tell a story.
Congratulations to all the winners, and thank you to all the filmmakers who took part this year and shared their powerful stories. Thanks also to Modern Films and to the Kering Foundation for the terrific work they do. And thank you for joining us today. It's been a pleasure to have you. If you want to watch all the films, you can do so up until Christmas Eve on the 16 Days, 16 Films website. And if you'd like to hear more fabulous female film chat, then tune into Girls on Film podcast. You can see the link below the screen right here. From me, Anna Smith, and all the team, stay safe and Merry Christmas.